our treatment of the aggregate producer surplus is going to parallel the one that we have just done for the aggregate consumer surplus. So let's start by reminding you about a very basic thing that we learned in Unit 3, which is that if you have the supply curve for a firm, let's say for firm J at P, that tells you the supply of the firm at any price P, you can invert that and get the inverse supply function for that firm at any quantity J. That is the inverse demand function that we saw before. And remember that for the region with positive production is going to be equal to the marginal cost function of the firm. So the inverse demand function has that interpretation that for a firm that is maximizing profits, it reveals what the marginal cost is. Now let's ask, what is the meaning, the interpretation of the aggregate inverse supply function? So suppose that we look at a market, we observe, let's say, an aggregate supply function. So this is for the market that looks like this. From this we invert and we get the inverse supply function for the market. It's a function of X. The question that we want to ask is, what is the meaning of this value? What is it measuring? Okay? And to do it, it's going to be useful, as before, to remind ourselves that this aggregate demand supply function was built by adding individual demands, let's say for firm equals 1, firm equals 2, etc. And let's say that the individual ones, for example, may have looked like this. Now, the key thing to remember is that at any price P, okay, the aggregate supply is the sum, so XS market P is the sum of the individual firms' supplies. And that for each individual firm, the quantity, at this price P, what that is measuring is what is the marginal cost of production given the quantity, in this particular case, for example, 2, that each firm is produced. In this particular case, it's for firm 1, so this is the amount supplied by firm 1. And at this price is equal to the marginal cost for firm 1 of an extra unit, the marginal cost for firm 2 of an extra unit, etc. So similar to before, what we get is that this quantity, the inverse supply for the market at the quantity X, is the marginal cost of producing an extra unit by any of the firms with positive production. Now let's look at what aggregate producer surplus look like. So the producer surplus for the market at price P, which is going to be equal to the sum over all of the firms of their individual producer surpluses at that price, just measures the total increase in profits for all firms from being able to participate in the market. Now, if we use the formula that we derived before, this is going to be equal to the integral from 0 to the amount that is supplied by each firm at price P of P minus the inverse demand function, supply function, for that firm, dx. And for exactly the same intuition that I gave you before for the case of aggregate consumer surplus that I'm not going to repeat here, we can write this as the integral from 0 to, for the market, the amount supplied at price P of P minus the inverse supply function for the market, dx. So we get that if this is the, let's say, the aggregate supply function for the market at price P, at this price, we get that, so this is the price, this area is the producer surplus for the market at price